The Tailey Fang foot rig. The foot rig is, very quick summary, it's a Dikko foot rig, D-I-K-K-O, so go look up him and see what his rigging series tells you about rigging up the foot. We have a couple of extensions. We have a heel bone, which does a damped track and limit rotation to the calf. We've got an Achilles tendon, a child of the heel bone, that also, does a stretch to the calf. We've got metatarsals are doing some stretch to and limit rotation to these bones that are a child of the last bone on the IK chain of the toe. Each toe is a inverse kinematics IK chain going up. And so as you can see, when we move that toe up or down, the metatarsal kind of follows naturally, but also we can pose the toe independently of all the other toes and using IK. We've got this master controller. All the IK controls and IK pull targets up here are a child of that. So if I move it, I can move all the toes at the same time. That's awesome. All right, so that is the quick overview of how this foot rig works. And the quick summary of that is you just go get a Dikko foot rig and just add in those things I just mentioned. All right, so now let's go into some detail. How does all this work? The heel bone. Heel bone is a child of the ankle, and so if we were to rotate the foot, that heel bone does move along. Now, the trick to it, though, is we want the Achilles tendon to pull out a little bit as that ankle bends, right? So as we bend this, we want that Achilles tendon to pull back a bit and provide that shape on the backside of the ankle like that. To get that, the heel has a damped track to the calf. Not much, just 0.45 as you can see here, but it does have a bit of a damped track. It also has a limit rotation. This is just because as the foot rotates forward, the way the heel should track towards the calf is different than as it goes back. And so that you can just play with that limit rotation and kind of get the idea, make it look right for your character. But that's just the basic idea there of what that limit rotation is doing. Outside of the limit rotation, more or less, it's just doing a damped track so that the base of the Achilles tendon can kind of be pulled back or pulled forward as the heel rotates. Now, the Achilles tendon itself, it being a child of that heel, okay, that's part of it. The other half of it is a stretch to. It stretches to the calf. That way, if I rotate the ankle up, then this whole area of the mesh compresses down. And I believe I do have a maintained volume. Yeah, I've got a little bit of maintained volume on it, so it will grow a little bit as it compresses on its y-axis. It'll grow out a little bit on the other axis and make it look good. If we took these tights off, you would see sometimes, depending on how we bend her ankle, the tendon will push out here and cause some compression of the mesh here, which actually looks, to my eye, what it would look like if the ankle was rotated on that other axis. So I'm pretty happy with what happens to the deforms. Now, if you bend her ankle too much, it essentially breaks, so you do have to be a little careful and not bend her ankle in a very weird way. But as long as you keep her ankle in a kind of anatomically correct range of motion, you'll get a really nice look on the backside of her calf between her heel and her calf down in this, I guess, bottom calf area. Okay, so that's one thing. The next thing is the metatarsals. Metatarsals are pointing to, using a stretch to, sorry, not pointing to, stretching to this bone. What is this bone? This bone is just a child of the toe here, but it is at the same location. So, its base is at the same location as the other toe. So basically what we're just doing here is we want the metatarsal to point to this bone in here, but we don't really want it to point to this bone because that's too low, right? What we want it to do is point above, because the metatarsal would be attached by a tendon to the top of that bone. And so this is what we're simulating here. This bone is a non-deforming bone here. If we look at it, and deform is unchecked. So all its purpose is to be a stretch to target for the metatarsal. Metatarsal is a deforming bone. This other bone down below that it's a child of is also a deforming bone. This one in the middle, not. Every single toe has a bone like that. Like the little toe here has one, and it's kind of hard to see because there's so many bones in here, but each one of these has a bone above or origin bone of the toe has one of those sticking off for the metatarsal to point to. So this metatarsal, and all of the metatarsals have the same constraints with the same influence, etc. They have a stretch to going to the head or tail, I guess, 0.1, so all the way at the end here. And then the limit rotation, the -14 means it can rotate up a bit, but it cannot rotate down at all, except for the fact that we have a 0.9 influence. So it can rotate down a little bit because, it's because of the only 0.9 influence there. So let's watch that again with all the knowledge that we now have, right? If I pull the toe down, that metatarsal is trying to point to that kind of greenish bone there. And as I move it up, it's doing a very good job of pointing to that greenish bone. And so you get what looks pretty good. The skin and muscle there all kind of bunching up on the top of the toe. And let's grab this next one and take a look at how that looks as well. There we go. So metatarsal toe all working in tandem. So each one of these toes in the center is pretty normal. By the center, I mean these three toes, what I call the index toe, middle toe, and ring toe. Not sure if that's actually their names, but whatever. I'm going to go with the finger names. So these three are all exactly the same. The big toe and little toe are a little special. So what do these have? These have this bone, which is the second from the end, is the IK, the one with the IK constraint with a chain length of 2. And actually all bones have that IK constraint chain length of 2, including the big toe and the little toe. What's different about these three toes in the middle is this very end bone is still inside of the toe. You notice in the big toe that end bone is outside the toe, same with the little toe. But here in the middle, index, middle, and ring toes, that bone is inside, and they have some constraints on them. They have copy rotation constraints. So one copy rotation constraint is they copy the rotation of this bone. And what this causes is, let's look at this from a different angle down here. As I move this toe, say, back, it curls. So you see how it curls here, and as I straighten it out completely, it ends up curling backwards a little bit. So this is look that I like when I'm animating and even for stills. But if you really needed the toe to be back like that and you didn't want it curled back like that, you can counter animate this. If you rotate it on its x-axis, what is the other copy rotation constraint here? This is copying the rotation of the control. So if I did want all the toes to, say, be rotated back on that, I could grab their controls and rotate them on their x-axis, and they'll, oops, I've got this on active element. I want now this to be on individual origins, and you can see I can rotate each one of those toes at the very end using that. So that is how all the IK constraints are set up, and the final bone in each one of those three middle toes. The big toe and little toe, as mentioned, they have 0 constraints, so these end bones actually don't serve any purpose. They are vestigial bones in my rig. The only bones that are important in the big toe and little toe are these two, and that is because they're just part of the IK chain. So that ends up, that does limit the deforming capability, or I should say posing capability of the big toe and little toe, but as far as I can tell, that is roughly anatomically correct. So enjoy that. So I believe this covers every aspect of this rig that Dikko has and my extensions above and beyond it. One other trick, though, is say you wanted to rotate her foot. By default, when you grab her foot control and rotate it, it rotates around the center of her foot. And if you wanted to rotate on the ball of her foot, well, that's something that the Dikko rig goes over how to set that up. But what if you want to rotate around the heel of the foot? Well, there's this bone that is at the very bottom of the, just outside the IK chain of her leg that's like centered on her ankle. If you grab her foot rig, then this ankle bone, then make sure that your pivot point is on active element. Now, when you rotate, it rotates around her ankle. And because that is at the end of the IK chain, that means when I'm rotating this, her leg does not move at all. Where normally, if you just grab the foot controller and move it, it does move her leg because it is causing that IK chain source, I guess, to move. So that anytime you're rotating her foot on just about any control, you'll notice that her leg also moves. But if you want to rotate her foot without moving it, grab the foot, then this, set that active pivot point, and then there you go. So that is everything about the foot rig. Hopefully you've enjoyed. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, comments are welcome. We'd love to hear it.